The coronavirus pandemic has been awful. The ensuing recession is likely to be even worse. But there's something on the horizon, something knocking at the door of humanity, something existential that is likely to be the biggest problem humanity has ever faced. That is the climate crisis. Now, I don't want to be alarmist and I don't want to go around scaring people, but there are a series of facts that have emerged over the last 30 to 40 years that are proving that our world is at risk. The coronavirus pandemic, for example, has been described by Bill Gates as being a very, very, very easy problem to solve in comparison to climate change. It is my firm belief that the individuals that tackle the climate crisis, a new breed of super entrepreneur, if you will be the most powerful individuals to have ever lived. They'll probably be more important, more powerful, more influential than some of our most famous politicians. And all because they'll be hailed as being individuals that have saved this planet, but will have also generated extreme value for our society, our economies, and our people. So what are the opportunities that these super entrepreneurs are going to target? Let's get into it. Welcome to the Rational VC YouTube channel. On this channel, we discuss all things building and investing. We also have a podcast, which I'll link in the notes below, where we talk to some of the industry's biggest and best investors and founders. If you enjoy this content, we also have a monthly email called The Rational Letter, where we deep dive into concepts similar to this and explain in significant detail and with a lot of market research what the opportunities of the future look like. You can see more about us at rationalvc.com. So in this video, we're going to break down the climate crisis and potential opportunities that exist for founders. So let's ground ourselves, let's level set on exactly what the major problem here is. What the hell is going on and what is climate change? Climate change basically just refers to the increasing changes in the measures of climate over a long period of time, including precipitation, temperature, and wind pattern. It's these types of measures that are showing us that the planet is warming, and therefore we need to reverse this warming effect. You might also have heard of the greenhouse gas effect. This refers to the rise in global temperatures due mainly to increasing concentrations of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. Greenhouse gases can include gases like methane and carbon dioxide. What we also know is that humans are unequivocally responsible for this climate change and global warming effect. There's analyses like fingerprinting analysis that can prove this. And this analysis actually shows us that it's humans that are responsible for this, and it can't be explained by other natural phenomena. Studies by Shi Zhu and team have shown that by 2070, it's likely that 20% of the world's population, 1 to 3 billion people, are likely to be living in conditions that have historically not been friendly to humankind. What that translates to is that over the last 6,000 years, there's rarely been any condition that exists like this that has been conducive to life for humans. In other words, we're kind of fucked. But interestingly, we can actually highlight and pinpoint where a lot of this trouble is emerging from. One cool way of looking at it is to think about the amount of energy demand that has been increasing across the world, especially as countries like China and India have grown at exponential rates. The UN expects the population on Earth to reach about 11 billion by the year 2100, which essentially translates to, in about a century, having the number of people on the planet doubling. So it's no surprise that we've seen an increase in energy use and we will continue to see an increase in energy use. And the problem really lies here with this historic increasing use of energy and a forecast requirement for more energy. We've actually not been using sustainable sources to produce this energy, nor does it seem do we have an effective plan for how we're going to actually solve this energy problem in the future as well. But if we deep dive even one layer further, we can actually highlight exactly what processes and human activities are causing this increase in energy demand. And it's probably no surprise that as we become more consumerist as a society, that industrial processes, the factories that build the stuff that we consume, are the biggest contributor to emissions on our planet. Second and third are buildings and transport. And within buildings, we're talking both residential, so the homes that we live in, and commercial, so the large-scale office buildings, for example. Additionally, it's probably important to note that even today, around 84% of our energy use is coming from non-renewable sources. That is oil, coal, and natural gas. The reason these aren't sustainable is because you've got to dig them out of the ground, and there's only a finite amount of this stuff left on Earth. So even if you're a skeptic and you believe that, you know what, it doesn't matter, the Earth will warm, this is a natural process, and you ignore the fingerprinting analysis, what you're essentially saying is you're comfortable with your children or your children's children not having the same opportunities that you did. But now that we've identified the crux of the problem, let's move on to the potential solutions. This is where shit gets interesting, because this is where the real opportunity lies for entrepreneurs and investors alike. The major movement that is helping us decarbonize, i.e. step away from these non-renewable sources of power, is electrification. Electrification basically just means technologies like solar, wind, battery-powered vehicles, electrification of heat, and storage for intermittent supply. As a side note, intermittent supply just basically means, given that we're using technology that can only work and produce energy when the sun is shining or when the wind is blowing, for the periods where the sun isn't shining and the wind isn't blowing, we can actually store additional electricity and supply it then to the grid later on. But as more of these types of assets begin being deployed, what we're going to see is a need for energy management, an ability to manage the load, manage the supply and demand aspects of this type of intermittent supply. The technology that supports this is really going to be where a lot of people make money. Consider this. You've got a solar panel on your roof, you've got an electric vehicle plugged into your garage, and you've also got a battery, a Tesla power pack, for example, next to your electric vehicle. You've also got a whole bunch of appliances in your house that you'd like to control remotely from your phone. What you could do in the future is use the excess energy that your electric vehicle has generated from charging up to supply other appliances in your house, or to feed back into the grid and get a payment for supporting the grid at times of need. There will literally be apps and data companies that will be able to support this process, and in doing so gather so much data about how people use their appliances, their vehicles, their energy essentially, and that will enable the companies that house this data to have a shit ton of information on people around the world and on households. Now, there's a lot more detail around electrification and some of the problems associated with battery technology, particularly around the actual amount of resource required to mine the ingredients required to build a battery. There's also some bottlenecks with regard to the countries that are supporting the creation of these batteries. China is a major player in this space, and given the current geopolitical tensions that exist between China and the US, it may not prove to be the best place to play at the minute. So what other opportunities does that open? Well, there's two really. There's nuclear power and hydrogen. Nuclear power has a really bad rep in the industry, and rightfully so. It's been weaponized and threatened to end the world during the Cold War, and it's been unfortunately responsible for deaths of thousands and thousands of people at Nagasaki and Hiroshima, and more recently has caused damage to the environment again at Fukushima. And so naturally, people are less inclined to look at this technology as the future technology to stepping away from fossil fuels. You've also got the threat of North Korea and Iran in supposedly engaging in weaponizing nuclear technology. But putting that aside, it's actually quite a cost-effective and long-term approach, and pretty safe approach, I must say, to supporting our move away from fossil fuels. But if that's a little bit too political for you, I think hydrogen offers the best long-term option, and many countries are trying to get in on the ground floor of this change. The Australian government, for example, introduced a $370 million package to help with the hydrogen deployment in that country. The really interesting thing about hydrogen is it's the most abundant element in our solar system, and crucially doesn't have the commercial viability issue that intermittent supply does. It can run forever. Aside from the fact that hydrogen is so bountiful, it's also highly efficient. It has about a 65% efficiency rate, which basically means a lot less waste and a lot more is put to supporting our need for energy. That 65% is about triple what conventional power plants today produce. This is also why it's ideal for space travel, although Elon Musk will disagree with this. But anyway, the point still stands that hydrogen looks like the long-term opportunity for most investors and entrepreneurs. There is obviously value in entering the data play and entering the renewable space with regard to intermittent generation, but that boat might have sailed. The next boat that's docking right now is probably the hydrogen boat. And it offers an opportunity beyond saving this planet. It also offers an opportunity to fuel us to other planets. And so targeting opportunities that exist within the hydrogen space probably offer the best bet that you could make in the energy space. Well, I hope you enjoyed that video. That was somewhat complex, but I hope you took something away around what the future of the energy market looks like and where potential opportunity lies. If you want more detail on this, you can check out the article on rationalvc.com about the climate crisis. I'll link the essay in the notes below. If you did enjoy this, please do consider liking and subscribing. We release content at least once a week on all things building and investing, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one. Cheers.